In this lesson, we'll add some more ventilation items as well as connectors to our plumbing system. All right, so we've got several of our drains in place. At this point, let's start tying some of this stuff together. So what we need to do is add some connection pieces that are going to allow us to tie these drains into this main drain stack as well as to our main ventilation stack. And then after that point, we can begin adding some more ventilation elements and continue building it out in that form right there. So what I'm going to do first is jump around to our 3D view, and I'm going to stretch out some of these elements to get them pretty close to where we want to connect as I can. I'm going to do the same thing down below. And once I have those pretty close to the drain pipe that I want to connect them to, I'm simply going to add a connection piece at that point and connect the two pieces. So what we want to add in here is our T-connections. And basically once we get that in place, it's going to break up our giant stack that we placed initially into different segments, so we can begin defining those accordingly. So let's add some pieces together here. So we'll go to Systems, and we're going to add some pipe fitting connections. And we're not going to add this elbow. It's not really going to be in our system. We're going to have a lot of T connections for this system. So in that drop down, you can see we have plenty of connections to choose from and transition pieces, but we want to go with a really generic standard T connection. And one of my favorite things about working in Revit is the fact that a lot of things tend to snap together, and there's a lot of intuition involved in putting this model together. So once I have my item selected that I want to add, I'm going to hit TL to thin these lines out. Revit will snap it in place for me to where it thinks it needs to be. So I can click there, and I can see that my connector is automatically where it needs to be. So now that I have that connection in place, if I needed to adjust its position from the position I set it initially, I can simply use these click on these rotate buttons, and it'll rotate it into position, and it'll keep on rotating it until you get to your desired position. But we're in a good shape, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that pipe, and I'm going to try to maintain that blue dashed line, and I'm going to click till I get to about right there. And what that's going to do is going to create an automatic connection. And how I know it's connected is there's no gap in here, and I have a connector piece, and it automatically snapped into place. Had this not connected, this would probably be hard to see this connector piece because this would be extruded way past that element, or you'd also see some of the round edges sticking out on the side here. So I know right now that we are in good shape. So we could do the same thing on this side. We could start adding connectors all the way through. We're going to really start connecting and tying this system together. So let's do it a couple more times here. So we'll go to Systems, Fittings, and we'll go with our T-fitting. And again, we're going to let Revit do some of the work for us here. We're just going to snap this guy into place. And luckily, I don't have to make any initial adjustments. So we're in good shape so far. So again, all we need to do now is simply just stretch the end of that pipe over, maintaining our slope. And I'll probably go to about this midpoint here. And occasionally you'll get these messages, but that's not a problem. Just hit cancel and just keep trying to find that snap point. It's really important that you get these connected properly, and it really helps to have Revit do it for you. So once I click there, I can see that my connection's made. I have no warning messages, and I'm in good shape. So there's no need to, if you do get a little warning message when you're trying to connect these, there's really no need to panic. Sometimes you got to do it a couple of times and find that right area to snap it into, like we just did. So let's finish out a couple more connections here on the bottom, and then we'll start adding some vertical ventilation to our fixtures. So I'm going to stretch this guy over just a little bit, again maintaining my slope. And we're going to add a fitting. So we'll go Systems, Fitting, T-fitting, and we'll let Revit kind of do this for us here. And while we have that command here, let's go ahead and add the other one to this side. So again, we're just going to click those endpoints, maintaining that blue dashed line. Lets me know I'm moving in a nice fashion here, and I'm created a nice connection. So far, so good. And we'll finish it out on this side. Let me click on this element. It makes it a little easier to orbit around. So all we're going to do again is simply click and drag that endpoint, maintaining our blue dashed line and our slope. And perfect. All right, so now what we can do is we can start using and setting some reference planes to find out how we're going to set up our vertical ventilation systems. So you could do a lot of that in our west elevation. So we'll set the stage, we'll get our reference planes in place, and later on in the next lesson, we'll start adding those elements. So west elevation, we'll jump to it. And let's see where we'd like to place these items. I know that when I click on this area, let's click on the architecture tab so we can get our planes. What we want to do is we want to set up our reference planes in a way that they're lined up with where our drains are going to be. This is going to do a couple of things. It's going to let me know where my drains are vertically, the vertical drains are in reference to the drain on our fixture. And two, it's going to let me know where I need to place my connector on our horizontal drain. So most of our elements are going to have the drain located just on the center of that element. So that's going to make it really easy. But I still like to have those reference planes in place anyway. So I'm going to click reference plane, and I know that I'm going to look for the center point of this item here. And I'm simply going to click my reference plane past the exterior of our model here. And if I wanted to double check, I can simply click on that element, and you can see our drain right here, and our reference plane goes directly through the middle of that. And that's exactly what we want. So we'll do the same thing here for our sink. Again, we'll go reference plane, and I know that that reference plane is going to be on the middle. We'll do that as well. And same thing for our toilet. I know that's going to drain straight from its midpoint on down into our drain. So far, so good. So it looks like we're going to have probably 2 or 3 vertical ventilation pipes going here. We'll probably just need 1 for our second floor. And again, I'm going to want to line it up with the drain on our sink. So I'm just going to click on that item and see if I can't locate it. So it's going to be on the midpoint of our sink. And I know that this entire thing here is my countertop and my entire system. But when I click on it, I can kind of see through it just a little bit. And you can see this one right here is my drain. So maybe if I jump to wireframe, I might be able to locate that midpoint a lot easier. So we can go to architecture now and place that reference point right there in that middle. And that's exactly where we need to be. And again, these guys down here are going to actually drain, or I'm going to attempt to drain these guys into our ventilation system. That way we don't have to add an extra ventilation pipe. So kind of save us some money and some labor on adding extra pipe. So now that we have our connectors in place for a lot of our drains, and we also have our reference planes in place for our vertical ventilation stacks, in the next lesson, we'll actually start adding those ventilation pieces.